All right, we want to welcome everybody to the virtual community meeting for the George W. Liles Parkway Small Area Plan. My name is Joseph Beasley. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator with the City of Concord. I want to again thank you for attending and joining us and engaging us in this virtual meeting during COVID-19. We're trying this new way to engage everybody instead of an in-person public meeting to respect the social distancing guidelines. Just want to let you know that everyone's watching today, their cameras and microphones will not be enabled. In order to ask questions throughout the presentation, there is a Q&A chat feature. If you want to ask your question there, we'll be addressing all those questions at the end of the presentation. As far as when watching this recording at a later date, that's a recording, feel free to send an email directly to Kaylee, our design manager, or give her a phone call. And then also there's an opportunity at the end of the presentation survey that's being promoted that will be available till June 5th to give feedback. Again, major questions will be addressed at the end of the webinar, and we want everyone to know that the questions will be addressed. Again, you'll see here, this is a list of everyone who's participating in the meeting today. Again, I'm the Economic Development Coordinator. Steve Osborne is here. He's our Planning and Neighborhood Development Director. Kaylee Caton, our Design Manager, the lead on this project. Scott Sherrill, Development Review Manager, and Cherise R., Community Outreach Coordinator, are moderating the questions. And Rose and Associates is who the city is working with on the market analysis for this area. Kathleen Rose and Daniel will be participating in the meeting as well. And I'll turn it over to Kaylee. Her contact information, again, is right there on this screen. So feel free to send her any direct questions or comments if you have any.
Thank you, Joseph. As you said, I'm Kaylee Caton, Design Manager in the Planning and Neighborhood Development Department, and I just wanted to start today by thanking you all for your participation. It really means a lot to have you joining us. This is the meeting agenda for tonight. As we kick off the community input portion of the small area plan, we hope that this presentation is informative and useful for everyone. And as Joseph said, questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So I'm going to start today by answering two questions. What is a small area plan, and what is the purpose of a small area plan? At its core, a small area plan is a guiding document, and its purpose is to improve the design and management of public spaces. The George W. Liles Parkway Small Area Plan specifically will serve as a policy guide that provides the framework for future growth and development along the George Liles Corridor. This slide shows the planning process steps of the small area plan. So the project timeline for the development of this small area plan. Throughout the planning process, planning staff has completed preliminary mapping, engaged key stakeholders, and we are now engaging the community to construct a shared vision for the future. As you see here, we're on step 6 with community input, or community meeting and input. After receiving input from the community, staff will draft the small area plan and review it with key stakeholders, allowing time for comment from the community and attendance at public hearings during the adoption process. So the George Liles Parkway Small Area Plan is centrally located in Concord. Here on the right, you see a county map showing Cabarrus County, the city limits, and the location of the George Liles area plan. On the left shows the relationship of the study area to George Liles here, Highway 29 and 49. It also shows the breakdown of between area A and B. Staff wanted to include the George Liles corridor from about Weddington Road all the way to 49, but we recognize that there are two distinct areas within the corridor. Area A is largely comprised of undeveloped land with some commercial, while Area B is mostly residential with some small-scale industrial and undeveloped land as you get towards 49. In this aerial view from Google Earth, you can see major roads such as I-85, Highway 29 again, and Highway 49, as well as the George Liles Parkway corridor. We've tagged a few of the surrounding areas on this map that sort of create a circle around our area. Again, area A is highlighted in blue and B is highlighted in green. Before we move to some of the technical aspects, I have a quick poll for those of you tuning in live. If you could answer the two questions you see on your screen. The first, do you live in Concord, yes or no? And then if so, do you live in the study area and which one? And if you don't live in them, please answer neither to submit. All right, looks like we've got most of the votes. So about 68% live in Concord, and about 50-50 on those that live in the study area versus those that don't. This slide goes over some of the topic areas that'll be included in this final small area plan. I'm not going to read through all of them individually, but just to share some of them today. Our intent is that the plan will provide decision makers with detailed land use, community design, transportation, and other infrastructure related recommendations to guide future land development decisions. The plan will identify both public and private investments and strategies that should be pursued in order to realize its vision. It'll also update the broader, more general district plans, as well as some of the older area plans. One of the broader district plans, as an example that it relates to, is the 2030 land use plan, which provides this growth concept map you're seeing here. It defines part of our study area as the Central Concord district and identifies some growth challenges for the area, providing connections between activity centers. The activity centers are these blue asterisks. Ensuring compatible transitions between uses, maintaining Concord Parkway as an attractive corridor that serves as a gateway to downtown Concord, and serving a mix of travel modes along Concord Parkway. And right about here is our study area A, and area B is further down outside of the Central Concord district. One of the previous area plans that aligns closely with study area A is the 2005 Concord Parkway Roberta Church Road Small Area Plan. This plan identified a land use pattern for 780 acres of largely undeveloped land and recommended the alignment used to construct the George Liles Concord Parkway extension, as well as the interchange with 29. It also reserved locations for key civic facilities, envisioned the Great Wagon Road Greenway here, identified major activity centers, recommended urban pedestrian-friendly development, and promoted new design standards to ensure attractive and sustainable future development. A lot has changed since 2005 in the past 15 years, which is why we've expanded the boundaries and are now inviting the public to help develop today's vision for this area. And Kathleen, with that, I'm going to pass it on to you. If you have anything to add to this slide, please do so, and then we'll move forward.
Great, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Kathleen Rose with Rose & Associates, and it's hard to believe it's been 15 years, but I actually worked with the land planning team that did this small area plan back in 2005. And as Kaylee mentioned, a lot has happened. Since that plan was done, it really largely facilitated the evolution and the expansion of the George Liles Parkway. So since then, that 4-lane section from 29 up to Weddington Road has been complete. The school site, which is identified east of the Parkway, has actually been built. as has the Weddington Neighborhood Center has actually been constructed, and that's the new Publix grocery store area. And other than that, a lot of things have happened around the area. So as we start to look at this from a fast forward 15 years, what we want to look at is what did we say and what did the market look like then, and then what does it look like now? And then coupled with that, the economy has changed. We had a recession in 2008, which went through about 2012 or so. And now we're looking at some of the dynamics that have changed. We start with a macro to micro view and take a look at a community snapshot. And we're looking at the area from we're within the Charlotte region. Obviously, Cabarrus County is the larger geographic area that we kind of start our analysis from a demographic and economic standpoint, as that's how data is collected. Then we drill down and look at the city of Concord, as well as the study area itself. So beginning with this, we start at the city level and make some comparisons. Obviously, the city of Concord is really, in summary, an educated middle-class population. The majority of folks that live in the city work in white-collar jobs, about 66%. And you can see by the population to the right versus the number of employees to the left, a lot of folks commute both out of the city to work, as well as folks that might commute into the city. About half of the number of employees as compared to the population. Obviously, Concord is the largest city in the county and serves as the county seat, and is driven by a lot of the growth predominantly in the tourism, retail, and manufacturing industries. When we take a look a little bit closer and zoom in on the study area itself, the next snapshot shows us how this compares to the community. And what's interesting to note is, as compared to the old study area from the 2005 plan, we've pretty much doubled our study area, as Kaylee mentioned, with a lot of the residential neighborhoods to the south heading toward Harrisburg and Highway 49. This smaller area is about 2,400 acres, area A and B combined, and is about 3.82 square miles. What's interesting, however, is that the growth in this corridor and this area grew twice as fast as that of the city and the county. And it is a more affluent area and has higher income and education and then as compared to the city level. So that kind of forms the basis of just kind of looking at things from a snapshot standpoint. As we kind of dial back to the city level and the key demographic trends, the city grew by about 20% from 2010 to 2019. And as you all know and hope you plan on participating in the upcoming census for 2020, well, it'll be interesting to see how things have changed. However, we do have trends and data that continues to track both at the city and the county level that brings us up to 2019 numbers. So as mentioned, the city grew about 20% and about 61% of the population is in those generations of working age, meaning the millennials, the Gen X, and the Gen Z from ages 18 to 64, which is your working age population. Also interesting to note is that the prolific housing growth that happened in the community happened largely between 2000 and 2009, as we can see by the bottom right chart that shows the year of the housing built within the city. So that shows us some interesting dynamics of what's going on in the market. When we start to look at the community, one of the big factors that we continually hear about is quality of life. And we also know from recent studies that attraction of companies has to have a workforce talent and attraction for these younger populations. So we do focus a lot on quality of life and what are the things that create community wealth. Obviously, residential migration is important, and having housing stock that meets the needs of the consumer and their current demands, both housing for sale and for lease. We also look at tourism and things to go do and places to go buy things and experiences that folks want to have in terms of a lifestyle. And what we find is in older generations, the older generations moved wherever the job was. these newer generations and future generations of workforce choose first where they want to live and then look for the job. So lifestyle and quality of life is more important than ever, not only for community growth, but for attracting talent and employment and job growth. Community capital are those things that how do we keep that money circulating within the local economy rather than exporting it out? And lastly, imports and exports tell us really what's driving the demand for job growth in all of the areas, the industrial park, the grounds at Concord, et cetera. So moving into how do we do our market analysis and figure out what's the best type of land uses for the study areas, we move from this concept of quality of life into really what the demand drivers are for real estate. And the bottom line is that jobs are the primary driver for real estate demand. And it starts in this pattern of what we call economic base theory. So if we start with basic employment is basically those goods and services which are imported or exported out of the local community, as shown on the previous slide. So basic employment are those things that are greater than the national average in terms of importing or exporting both consumers and or jobs or goods and services in and out of the market. That really drives predominantly demand for office and industrial uses. But when a company moves into the community, they create that growth. So if someone moves into the area saying I want to move to Concord, I'm going to take a new job in Concord, they usually bring their household and their family and their money with them. That results in a total employment growth. And that total employment includes not only those basic employment, that key employment, but also those other employees that we call service employees. What's interesting here is that about 60% of the county employment is basic employment and 40% is non-basic, meaning service-related industries. And that's where we see your community really growing in terms of tourism, healthcare, and other more locally service-oriented dynamics. With that total employment, all of that is the commercial uses. What happens then is the total population grows, as we saw in the study area that grew twice as much, about 40% rather than 20% in the city, created housing demand. And that total population growth is our housing demand numbers. And of course, folks, when they move into a home, they want to have local services. They want to have places to go dining, shopping, eating, drinking, those kinds of things. So that's what creates the demand for the retail. And then that total demand are the numbers that we use to analyze that. Throw into that mix tourism and other things. So that helps us translate this into property types. What's interesting is the job growth in the county from 2018 to 2019 and through the end of the year of 19 was largely driven by construction, manufacturing, and accommodation and food services. So clearly the market is driven by the tourism industry, what's going on in the region, as well as manufacturing, which we've seen the growth of that proliferate. What's interesting here is that we've heard a lot, and we're going to be interested to hear from you about what types of things you'd like to see in this area, what type of employment, et cetera. What we're finding is as we look at the local market, it's largely driven by the industrial sector. About only 5% of the regional office market throughout the Charlotte region is in that total inventory. Less than 5% is in Cabarrus County. So we're carefully looking at the office market to determine if there may be some future opportunities in the George Liles Parkway here. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kaylee, and she will drive us through the rest of the findings of what we've looked at so far in the community and particularly in the study area.
Thanks, Kathleen. All right, we are going to dive a little further into the two study areas, starting with study area A. Just start with existing conditions, go over zoning and the 2030 land use plan, and then some possible improvements. Starting with existing conditions, just to point out a few things, this map is an aerial view of our Area A. These are all the parcels that you're seeing in the neighborhoods surrounding it. The blue are the schools for civic institutional. The orange outline is the grounds at Concord property, and then 2 existing commercial areas. This pink dashed line you're seeing here is an existing multi-use path along George Liles, and I've also highlighted the Concord Farms Road, the current alignment. On the next slide, we have the zoning districts. While most of the property in Area A is vacant, it could be developed with a range of uses from single-family neighborhoods to light industrial based on the current zoning without any additional action by City Council or the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the zoning districts listed here on the right are just the ones that fall within our study boundary. 2030 land use plan was adopted in 2018 after about a 1.5 year long process of gathering information, with the end result being a comprehensive plan. The 2030 land use plan provides guidance for Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as they consider rezonings in the area to change the permitted use of properties within Area A. So as you see here, most of Area A falls within this mixed use activity center, which would encourage the live work play scenario. We are using this small area plan to shape what the future looks like for this area. And any recommendations as a result of the George Liles Parkway small area plan may impact the land use and future rezonings. Some of the other land uses are suburban neighborhoods, commercial, industrial employment, and rural. Then looking ahead, as we start to detail the George Liles small area plan, these are some possible future improvements to study Area A. The Concord Farms Road could be realigned to help the connection between the different properties. The purple dashed line shows proposed multi-use paths, and the green is are the planned Greenway corridors, including Cottle Creek Greenway here and the Great Wagon Road Greenway. We've also put a possible park location, the thought process being that it could be a good connection between the 2 greenways as well as a trailhead for them. And we've highlighted some intersections that will need to be clearly defined and as part of the area plan, as well as the future Fire Station 12 here. We're really just starting to take a look at these improvements. If anyone has any thoughts or questions, please use the Q&A portion. Or feel free to contact me after the presentation. And if you're listening to the presentation, you can contact me with questions. This would be good for the survey too. There, at the very end is an open-ended question where you can provide some feedback. Moving into Area B, the existing conditions. This map is a little different because you'll see the red outline. That is showing the delineation between the city limits and the county. And here we have a couple schools with the civic institutional use. Again, the grounds at Concord property is in orange, an established industrial area, and Franklist Park, which is in green. I've also highlighted the George Liles corridor that turns into Stow Road about right here. For zoning in our study Area B, the majority of the property is already developed in accordance with zoning, but there are still some undeveloped properties. The southern part of the corridor, many of these sites are not currently within the city limits, which makes the 2030 land use plan a key component in how these properties would be zoned if or when they seek annexation into the city. And again, the zoning districts listed to the right are the ones that fall within our boundary. And you can see that they include some of the county zoning. And then for the land use plan in Area B, remember that this plan provides guidance for the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council as they consider rezonings to change the permitted uses of properties in Area B. And any recommendation from this plan may impact the land use plan and rezoning. So here a little different. We have a village center, suburban neighborhood, a larger industrial employment towards 49 as well as commercial. and urban neighborhood. It's over here. For some of the possible future improvements for study area B, the George Liles extension where Stile Road is currently is on the NCDOT hold list. These are a couple of multi-use paths that are identified, as well as key intersections, the Cottle Creek Greenway, and a couple others near Franklin Park. And again, the Fire Station 12 you see here. So with the introduction of the study areas and identifying those boundaries, the zoning districts and the land uses, we're going to move into the future vision for this area. And we're asking everyone to please visit the public input website to fill out a survey we've put together. It'll be open from May 11th to June 5th. And if you want to be updated on the progress of this plan as we move through the summer, please enter your email address so that we can contact you there. This image just shows, if you go to the publicinput.com/Concord, you'll find the George Liles area plan at the top, and you can click to participate, and that'll lead you to the main site. As we develop the future vision, one of the questions that you'll see is just really getting a feel for what the vision is for the area. It might include some of the things listed here: sports and recreation, shopping and dining, employment campus or industrial employment, what we call a lifestyle center, which is essentially a mixed-use development, residential, entertainment, or you may have some other ideas that you want to share with us. It's likely to also include a combination of these. And just to review the next steps, once we receive community input and Kathleen and her team kind of gather the market analysis piece, we will take everything and review it with the key property owners and work on drafting a small area plan. The draft will be reviewed again with the stakeholders and the community and be made available for public comment. We'll work on updating the plan before moving into the adoption phase, where planning and zoning reviews and makes a recommendation to City Council, and City Council would review and adopt the small area plan. Once adopted, the small area plan becomes a guiding document used by decision makers to guide future land development decision for the George Liles Corridor. And with that, I'm going to see if we've got any questions coming in, and Steve's here to help us answer some of those.
Yeah, this is Steve Osborne. I'll read one of the questions. There are multiple families that own land on Section A. If the land is not sold at once, the road sewer layout will never be flush and choppy at best as sections are built. How does the city plan on acquiring the land at once? Some that kind of want to reiterate what Kaylee was talking about. There are no plans for the city to acquire the property. It's more of a collaborative process between the city and the property owners and the citizens to develop the plan that will guide the growth. And with that, not only does it serve the private sector and pave the way for the approval process, but it also identifies for the city and the public sector areas that need improvement, such as water, sewer, say a library needs to go in that area, an additional fire station. Those are all things that we can take into account to start planning accordingly with the as the area develops. Okay, we received another question. My property in Sheffield Manor backs up to access in the road for the 3 schools off Weddington Road. Are there any plans to open this road to connect Weddington Road to George Liles? It currently is for school use only. The answer to that is no. There are no plans to connect Sheffield back to George Liles, and a lot of that was determined working with NCDOT on the George Liles extension through there. This corner of Weddington and George Liles was supposed to be a Lidl grocery, rezoned for grocery only. Based off the layout, will that lot be rezoned to RV as listed in the plan? It would not be rezoned by staff, and since it is a conditional for a grocery, the only thing that could go on that site is a grocery that is tied to that site plan. Since that's gone away, then any zoning would have to come back to the city, to planning commission, and possibly city council, depending on how the decision went. So right now, there is no plan to rezone, but keep in mind, nothing could go there without a rezoning other than what has been approved. Another question, what does RVCU mean for Roberta Woods? RV is the zoning, and it's a conditional use zoning. So the Roberta Woods would have been approved as a conditional use for that site. In other words, it was site plan driven at the time, and that's why the RVCU. It's just another layer to the zoning. Okay, there's another question. Does the city currently include any method within its planning process for assessing wildlife habitat as an urban quality of life factor within city limits as a whole, as well as individual small areas, including goals, methods for conservation, wildlife habitat, as well as corridors for migration? The answer is the city does partner with the Wildlife Alliance, and we also look at space for open space and work close with the property owner. Some is required by the ordinance, other can be guided through this area plan. As noted, especially in area A, there's wetlands and floodplain area, and those are prime wildlife corridor areas that we want to preserve. And there's opportunities for developing greenways in and around those areas, but also at the same time preserving not only habitat for the wildlife, but just the tree save in general. Yes, this was a real good question. Is public transportation a consideration for limiting parking needs? That would all be defined as the development continues. But I can tell you the city just approved a transit master plan, and this area is factoring in quite a bit, as is Concord Parkway for transit, and that's kind of one of the results of this planning process. Is it's an opportunity for the different city departments to work with the state, and also thinking regionally with the public transportation, so that we can maximize the transportation and multimodal, and that's really pedestrian, cyclists, cars, and mass transit also. And that could be bus rapid transit, local buses, and then possibly mass transit one day down Concord Parkway. Okay, we had another very good question. Is Weddington Road going to be widened with the increased flow of traffic of people trying to reach new zone A features like shops, housing, eating, walking, etc.? Traffic could be a hazard at Weddington. George Liles Parkway gain access to zone A. The short answer to that is no. Weddington Road is not planned to be widened at the present time, but actually whenever the city completes the George Liles small area plan, the next small area plan that we're going to be working on, which is slated for next fiscal year starting after July, is the Weddington Road, and that's one of the things that we'll definitely be taking a look at. Okay, here's another question. Are you proposing that developers donate the land for the Greenway between Weddington and Highway 29, Cottle Creek? The Greenway has been on the plan for this area for a long time, and we've been patiently awaiting it to connect these areas. The answer to that would be yes, but that all gets negotiated with the developers, with the property owners, where they donate the land, whether they give easements for the Greenway, or whether the city acquires it outright. And those are standard processes that we go through anytime the city's developing a Greenway. So, but you're right, that the Greenway has been planned, and there's increased momentum for that. And this plan has been working very closely with Parks and Recreation and the Greenway development. Here's a good question. It's what's the timeline to continue Liles to 49 via Stow Road? That's a good question. It's somewhat of a moving target. Most of you are probably aware of the funding challenges that NCDOT currently has. Most of their projects have been put on hold. That'll be something that we can post, the latest time frame. I really hate to, I've seen dates, and every time that I've seen it, it's been pushed back. So I'm hesitant to say now exactly what it would be, but we should have more definitive timeline in the very near future, and we'll certainly post that. Steve, we got a question. What's the time frame of the first conversations taking place with owners of land in Zone A? Actually, that is where staff started the entire process. We met with the internal stakeholders, the different city departments, county, NCDOT, and at the same time started meeting with the majority property owners, because in Zone A, there are really 5 majority property owners, and we started working with them and meeting with them to start with. And that started about February with intensive meetings. There's one that we were not able to meet with individually due to the COVID situation we've been discussing, but everyone else we met with personally.
This is Kaylee. I see there was a question about a potential for Greenway down George Liles. Right now, we're between Publix and 29. There's an existing multi-use path, and there is a plan for a multi-use path, I believe, on Stow Road near Franklin Park. But those are a little different than your traditional Greenway. So we'd have to kind of define those a little differently. As far as the open space connectivity plan for Parks and Rec goes, it doesn't show a Greenway on George Liles, just those multi-use paths.
Okay, we got a question. There's a small tract of land next to Roberta Farms as part of the sale of the grounds. Could it ever be rezoned from the current residential to industrial commercial to fit the needs of any future buyers of the grounds? The answer is any zoning change from what it currently is would have to go through the approval process, and we would look at the land use plan, but we also will look at the small area plan to guide those decisions, and that's what this whole process of the refinement to the area helps drive those decisions and approval processes.
That wraps it up for our question and answer portion. I just wanted to briefly remind everyone to please go to public input and fill out the survey. That's really where we're gathering everyone's responses, and there's some open-ended questions that you can fill in your comments. This presentation will be available on that public input site as a PDF, as well as a recording of everything we've discussed today. And really, if there are any other questions or something you don't think that we touched on, please feel free to call me. My phone number is on the screen right now, or send me an email, and I'll be sure to get back to you. Thank you for your participation today.